It's 1960. Detroit is loud, proud, and obsessed with one thing: power, big V8s, bigger carburetors, even bigger egos. Every automaker is chasing horsepower numbers that sound like bragging rights at a bar fight. 300 horsepower, 350, even 400. The muscle car era is about to explode, and everyone can feel it coming. Engineers are pushing limits. Marketing departments are inventing new words to describe speed. Showroom floors are filled with chrome and promises. But buried under all that noise, Chrysler does something strange. They build an engine that leans, literally, tilted 30 degrees to the side, long, odd-looking, almost awkward. It didn't have the aggressive stance of a V8. It didn't look powerful. It looked like something was wrong with it, like someone had assembled it incorrectly and nobody bothered to fix the mistake. And yet Chrysler bet their reputation on it. Most people have no idea what this engine really was. Because while everyone else chased glory, this thing quietly became one of the toughest, most overbuilt, almost indestructible engines ever made. And the truth behind it? It's not what you think. Because this wasn't just an economy engine, it was a survivor, and what it could endure shocked even Chrysler's own engineers. To understand the Slant Six, you have to go back to the late 1950s. Chrysler had a problem, a serious problem. Their lineup was filled with powerful V8s, the 383, the 413, big, beautiful engines that made all the right sounds and produced all the right numbers. But they needed something else, something smaller, cheaper, more efficient. The economy car market was growing. Not everyone wanted a gas-guzzling V8. Some buyers just wanted reliable transportation, something that would start every morning and get them to work without drama. Ford had their inline-six, Chevrolet had theirs. Both were decent engines, reliable enough, cheap to produce. Chrysler needed one too. But Chrysler engineers weren't interested in just copying the competition. They looked at what Ford and Chevrolet were doing and decided they could do better. Much better. They wanted something stronger, so they started with a clean sheet. No compromises, no shortcuts, just pure engineering focused on one goal: build an inline-six that would outlast everything else on the road. The result was the G engine family, and by 1960, the most iconic version arrived, the 225 cubic inch Slant Six. But right from the beginning, this engine broke all the rules. Instead of standing upright like a normal inline engine, Chrysler tilted it 30 degrees to the right. Why? At first glance, it seems pointless, even weird. Engineers from other companies probably laughed when they first saw it. What possible reason could there be for building an engine that looked like it was falling over? But there was a reason. A very good reason. That slant allowed for a lower hood line, better aerodynamics. Cars could be designed with sleeker profiles without the engine sticking up too high. And more importantly, it created room for something bigger, long, sweeping intake runners. See, with that angled design, engineers could stretch the intake manifold across the top of the engine in a way no upright inline-six could. The runners could be longer, smoother, more carefully designed for optimal airflow. Longer runners mean better airflow at low RPM. Better airflow means more torque. And torque is what actually moves a car, not peak horsepower. Peak horsepower sounds good on paper. It wins arguments at car shows. But torque is what you feel when you press the accelerator. Torque is what pulls a car up a hill. Torque is what makes an engine feel alive. And right there, Chrysler had already out-engineered the competition. But that was just the beginning. The 225 Slant Six used a bore of 3.40 inches and a stroke of 4.125 inches. That long stroke mattered. It wasn't a high-revving design. It wasn't meant to scream toward redline. Instead, it was designed to produce maximum power where drivers actually needed it, in the low and middle RPM range, where real-world driving happens. That long stroke meant strong low-end torque, smooth operation, and durability under stress. Compression ratios varied depending on the year, but early versions ran around 8.4.1 to 8.6.1. Later models climbed closer to 9.3.1 as fuel quality improved. Horsepower? On paper, it didn't look impressive, around 145 horsepower in early configurations. Later versions pushed closer to 170 horsepower. Torque sat around 215 lb-ft. Not exactly muscle car numbers, but numbers don't tell the whole story. They never do. Because this engine wasn't built to impress on paper. It wasn't built to win drag races or magazine comparisons. It was built to last. To run for hundreds of thousands of miles without complaint. And Chrysler made sure of it. The block was heavy, seriously heavy. Thick cast iron, reinforced main bearing webs, deep skirts that extended below the crankshaft centerline. This wasn't just an engine block. It was a fortress. Most economy engines of the era used thin castings to save weight and cost. They were designed to be cheap, disposable almost. If they lasted 100,000 miles, that was considered a success. Chrysler had different ideas. They cast the Slant Six block with enough material to stop bullets. The walls were thick. The webbing was substantial. Everything about it said strength over efficiency. The crankshaft was forged steel in early versions, later cast but still massively durable. 7 main bearings supported it. 7. At a time when many engines were still running 5. That meant less flex, more stability, better load distribution across the entire length of the crankshaft, and the ability to handle abuse that would destroy other engines. The crankshaft in a Slant Six didn't bend under stress. It didn't develop wobble over time. It just kept spinning, year after year, mile after mile. And then there were the internals. The connecting rods were thick, overbuilt, almost excessive for an economy engine. They looked like they belonged in a heavy-duty truck, not a compact sedan. The pistons? Simple, strong, designed for longevity, not lightweight performance. This thing wasn't delicate. It was industrial, almost like Chrysler accidentally built a truck engine and put it in passenger cars. But there was a problem. Despite all this engineering, the Slant Six had an image problem. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't fast, it didn't have a cool name or aggressive styling. And in the early 1960s, image mattered. America was falling in love with muscle cars, with speed, with power that you could see and hear and feel. Young buyers wanted excitement. They wanted their neighbors to stare with envy. The Slant Six didn't offer any of that. It was the responsible choice, the practical choice, the choice your accountant would recommend. So Chrysler did something interesting. They decided to prove just how tough this engine really was. And what happened next became legend. In 1962, Chrysler ran a brutal durability test. They took a Slant Six engine, mounted it on a stand, and ran it at full throttle. Not for an hour, not for a day, for 50 hours straight. Wide open, no cooling fan, no mercy, just a dyno cell, an engine, and engineers watching with clipboards. Most engines would have seized within minutes under those conditions. Oil would break down from the heat. Bearings would overheat and fail. Metal would expand beyond tolerances. Gaskets would blow. Something critical would give up. But this engine kept running, hour after hour, day into night. The engineers watched in disbelief, and when they finally shut it off, it still worked. Think about that. 50 hours at full throttle. That's the kind of stress engines only see in racing. And even then, not continuously. Race engines get breaks between runs. They get rebuilt constantly. They have teams of mechanics nursing them through every session. This Slant Six just sat there and took it. So how did it survive? It comes down to oiling. The Slant Six used a high-capacity oil system designed to keep everything lubricated under extreme conditions. Oil passages were large. Flow was consistent. There were no choke points where oil could be restricted, and the 7 main bearings ensured even load distribution across the entire rotating assembly. Instead of starving critical components under stress, it fed them constantly. The oil pump was robust, oversized for the application. It moved more oil than the engine technically needed, which meant there was always a safety margin. And that made all the difference. But even that wasn't the craziest part. There are stories, real stories, of Slant Six engines running with almost no oil. Drivers ignored warning lights, kept driving, miles and miles with the oil light glowing on the dashboard, and somehow, the engine didn't die. Mechanics would later tear them down and find worn bearings. Yes, damage, certainly, but not catastrophic failure. Not the kind of destruction that would turn an engine into scrap metal. The engine would limp along, complaining loudly, but refusing to quit entirely. One mechanic reportedly said, "I've seen these engines come in sounding like they're full of rocks, and they still run." That's not normal. That's almost supernatural. But there was a downside. That same durability came at a cost. Weight. The Slant Six was heavy for its size. Heavier than many competing inline-sixes. Heavier than it needed to be for the power it produced. All that thick casting, all those reinforced webs, all that overbuilt engineering, it added up. And because of that, it wasn't exactly quick. In a typical Plymouth Valiant or Dodge Dart, a Slant Six powered car would run the quarter mile in about 19 to 20 seconds. Top speed, around 90 to 100 mph pace. Not slow, but not exciting either. These weren't the numbers that made teenagers dream. These weren't the numbers that sold posters or inspired songs. And in an era where V8s were dominating headlines, the Slant Six got overlooked. It was the engine nobody talked about at parties. But Chrysler didn't stop there, because they knew something most people didn't. This engine had hidden potential. Hot rodders started to notice. In garages across America, mechanics who appreciated engineering over image began taking a closer look at the Slant Six. That long intake design? It worked. That strong bottom end? It could handle more power, way more. So they started modifying them, adding bigger carburetors, performance camshafts, higher compression pistons, headers instead of the restrictive factory exhaust manifold. And suddenly, things got interesting. With the right setup, a Slant Six could produce over 200 horsepower. Some race builds pushed even further. And thanks to that overbuilt bottom end, it didn't just make power, it survived it. The same engineering that made it indestructible in stock form made it bulletproof when modified. The thick block walls could handle more cylinder pressure. The forged crankshaft could handle more stress. The heavy connecting rods could handle more RPM. Drag racers began experimenting with turbocharging. Yes, turbocharging. On an engine most people thought was boring, and it worked. Because the block could handle boost. The crank could handle stress. The head gasket could handle pressure. The Slant Six wasn't fragile. It was waiting to be pushed. Some racers reported running 15 pounds of boost on essentially stock internals, numbers that would destroy most engines in minutes, numbers that required forged pistons and built blocks in other applications. But Chrysler never fully embraced that performance side. Why? Because by the mid-1960s, the muscle car war was in full swing, and Chrysler had bigger weapons. The 383, the 440, the legendary 426 HEMI. Compared to those monsters, the Slant Six didn't stand a chance in marketing. Nobody was going to put a Slant Six billboard next to a HEMI advertisement, so it stayed in the background. Reliable, dependable, forgotten. But while muscle cars came and went, the Slant Six kept going through the 1970s, through the oil crisis that destroyed sales of gas-guzzling V8s, through emissions regulations that killed high-compression engines. While V8s were detuned, strangled by smog equipment, choked by catalytic converters and air injection systems, the Slant Six adapted. Lower compression ratios, lean burn systems, simpler tuning. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, and people noticed. Taxi fleets started using them. Delivery companies relied on them. Police departments trusted them. Because when you needed a car that just wouldn't die, this was the engine you chose. Mechanics loved them because they were simple to work on. Parts were cheap. Diagnosis was straightforward. There was no complex computer system to fail, no electronic sensors to replace, just iron and steel and careful engineering. Production numbers climbed into the millions. From 1960 all the way to 1987, nearly 3 decades. That's not just success, that's dominance in its own category. The engine outlasted entire car models. It outlasted design trends. It outlasted management changes at Chrysler. It just kept being built because nothing else could replace it. But by the 1980s, everything was changing. Front-wheel drive was taking over, engines were getting smaller, lighter, more efficient. Fuel injection replaced carburetors. Electronics replaced mechanical simplicity. Computers controlled everything from timing to fuel mixture. And suddenly, the Slant Six felt old, heavy, outdated. Even though it was still reliable, it didn't fit the future. Buyers wanted modern technology. They wanted digital dashboards and electronic fuel injection. They wanted engines that could adapt automatically to changing conditions. The Slant Six couldn't offer any of that. It was a dinosaur, a magnificent, indestructible dinosaur, but a dinosaur nonetheless. So in 1987, Chrysler made the decision. They ended production, just like that. One of the toughest engines ever built quietly disappeared. No farewell, no celebration, no special edition, just gone. But here's the thing, legends don't disappear, they just wait. Today, the Slant Six has a cult following. Enthusiasts restore them, modify them, race them. Forums are filled with discussions about performance modifications, about turbo builds, about proving that this forgotten engine deserves respect. Because once you understand what this engine really was, you can't ignore it. It wasn't about speed. It wasn't about image. It was about engineering. Overbuilt, overdesigned, and almost impossible to kill. And in a world obsessed with horsepower numbers, that might be the most shocking truth of all. Because the 225 Slant Six didn't win races. It didn't dominate headlines, but it outlasted everything. And sometimes, survival is the greatest victory. If you enjoyed this story, let me know what you want to see next. Another forgotten engine, a legendary rivalry, or a machine that changed everything. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might be even crazier.